Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unstuck Pod. Very excited today to have David Glennie here. And I could butcher his background and what he's all about, his journey. But I'm going to leave it with him to share that with you. So welcome, David. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for
And
having me.
please tell everybody about you and where you came from and some of your journey and what's going on now.
My name is David Glennie. I'm the CEO and founder of Voodoo Park. So we founded Voodoo Park 14 years ago, 2012. And at the time when we founded it to be an AI business, because if you're very older and can remember 2012, there was a big burst of interest in AI then. Not the AI we have now. So not about large language models and creating text. It was about analyzing images. So you might remember Microsoft built a site that was able to tell your age. So it would look at you and determine your age. And that was quite a breakthrough, because if you didn't start engaging with the ideas of neural networks, it's almost impossible to figure out how that could be done. So you imagine trying to do that with a normal programming, sort of if this, then that kind of programming technique it just almost seems like an impossible problem. So that was very exciting. A lot of people were really interested in AI at that point, and we thought, right, this is definitely going to be a massive growth sector. So we kind of went in and everybody wanted to talk about it and nobody had any budget. And the things that people could think of doing with that technology was so horrible. I'll give an example, but I won't mention the company. But there is a UK TV channel, shall we say, who had this idea that they would give free televisions to people in exchange for the television watching them, so that they could tell advertisers how many children had seen an advert, which is a kind of a weird dystopian idea. And we're kind of, I'm not sure if the regulator would like that. It's a very clever idea. I'm not sure if the regulator would like it. And lots of other bad ideas like that. So in the end, we realized that all we were doing was making people seem more interesting in dinner parties. So, and nobody had any budget, but everyone wanted to do the workshop. And so we kind of, that's lovely, but we're going to starve to death. So we then kind of pivoted and went into building stuff for people. That was how my sort of background. I was CTO of various companies before I struck out myself. So we just started doing that, building large scale technology for people, and ended up doing a lot of stuff in the financial services sector. So lots of big fintech platforms. So we started working on a lot of those, and then that's all been very lovely. And then it's going to say 3-4 years ago, we split the business into internally, and I took a small group of people and started looking at the AI technology that was coming out around about that time. So this is GPT-2, something like that. So it was only really available as an API. You could download the weights and biases, but then they said, oh no, it's too dangerous. If anyone remembers that. This technology is so dangerous, we can't let it into the wild, which we now realize is just a marketing ploy. That's what you say when you want people to get really excited about what you're doing. It's like Anthropic doing it with their latest model. It's too dangerous to be let into the wild. It's only available to business customers. It makes it sound more exciting. It's kind of like, well, it can't be that dangerous, can it? So we started playing around with that, and we wanted to solve what we saw as being a couple of really big problems that this technology has in terms of being usable by enterprises. So the kind of people that we had as customers, not necessarily just in financial services, but the kind of people who has as customers, enterprises. So the two big problems. One is the opaque nature of neural network based decision making. At the end of the day, a neural network is just a lot of numbers that get multiplied together. So to go back and go, excuse me, why did we decide to do that? That's not an easy thing to do. And for a lot of decisions, certainly to imagine in an enterprise, decisions that involve numbers, that's problematic. So not being able to correctly attribute or audit, analyze decisions, that's a problem. And the second problem was what happens when AI-based systems meet the real world. And the real world is just a collection of edge cases. And what's difficult is adapting technology to deal with edge cases. And we wanted to create an AI platform where the user of it was able to adapt to the changing nature of the universe and the edge cases that appeared as a result, not to have to take it back to the shop all the time. And so we thought, well, we're going to crack all that in about 3 months, we thought. And then 2 years later, We eventually got 10 green lights on our 10 POCs that were supposed to prove that we could do this. And then we thought, oh, brilliant. We'll make that into a product. That'll probably take about 3 months as well. And then 18 months later, we eventually, so end of last year, we sort of eventually had something and just started just to show it to sort of friends and family, and are just about now to start. So we've got a couple of friendlies to customers that are kind of willing to come on board to give us use cases so that we can, prove it's a real thing, not just an idea. And we're now kind of at a point where we will be starting to go to market in earnest. And that's where we are. And that's where I am now.
Okay. So, wow, that was pretty awesome. Oh, okay. So can you, without giving away, I know you're just about to go to market and you've talked about sort of how do you do, answering the question of why did we get to these answers and how do you overcome the use cases? So here's the thing where I'm going. There's a lot of noise about AI. There's a lot of promises about AI. You referenced it. And so what is your product? So what is it? What would you say it is? What's it called, if you can? And then what is it?
I'm happy to talk about it. It's not secret. There's a website and everything. So it's not a secret. So the platform is called Amy, AI, and it's a AI orchestration platform. So you use it to build services, which is an Amy concept, so a service is something that will create agents as they are required in order to do work. So you can create a service that's like a colleague that does a particular role in your organization, like our financial controller is an Amy service. You can create services that are around delivering specific workflows that you might have. So we're helping a company at the moment entirely workflow and automate all aspects of their business. And so there's a lot of services which are specifically about moving data or making decisions for doing that. And you can also use it to create a customer-facing chatbot that you might stick on your website. And you can also use it to go out into the world and talk to other AIs upstream. So your potential customers, downstream, your potential suppliers, in that kind of AI to AI world that will become the way that we do business, in the same way that the web became how we do business now.
So lots of possibilities. Who then is using, who's creating those services within the organization? Are you helping them? You're helping them do that.
So we train people and we support people in doing it. But creating services doesn't require you to be a developer. You do that with natural language. You could do that through the wizard. You do that by interacting with the platform itself. So there's no kind of magic in this. You can do that, and then you can change how they work by just telling it, don't do that again because something's changed and now there's a problem. Can you do it this way instead? And you can just, as the user, you have control of that. So typically, the way it sort of works, we'll build some because it helps people really understand what's going on. And normally they want to do a pilot first. So we'll probably build those out, and then you'll have some to play with, and then people play with them. They go, oh, that gives me an idea. Could we do one more like this? And they said, yes, you can try and do that. So then they start building their own, and then it kind of just spreads kind of virally. People see that this person has solved a problem with it over here, and then they want to solve a problem with it in another part, and that works quite well.
So so now I'm going to, without being super technical, I'm trying to just make sure I see where it sits in the stack, right? So there's an LLM somewhere, and then there's what Amy sits in between, almost like a data layer or a connection layer between data, LLM, and
right. So yeah, let's chat architecture, Jamie. Right. So Amy does use large language models and other kinds of artificially intelligent models in order to do its work. Right.
Okay.
But it is not an adapter or connector that sits on top of a specific model. Right. So normally at the point of deployment, people are comfortable buying an LLM model or buying tokens of an LLM model if it comes from Microsoft. So for the customers we work with have so far, so we say that's fine. We'll use for the LLM part of this, we're going to use Microsoft's OpenAI 4.1, right? Something like that. The way that Amy works is it doesn't lean on the model in the way that just putting a front end on top of a model would do, right? So when we're talking about how to make things transparent, there's a kind of a specific architecture and a different kind of approach. So we're not taking what the user says and passing it into a model and then allowing the model to decide what to do next. There's a whole set of processes. I can give you a little bit of an overview of that, how that works if you want. I have no problem talking about
I'm
it.
interested. This is
You want to
interesting.
know? Okay, buckle up. So let's talk about two ideas, and I'll illustrate them both with kind of human models, right? So two key ideas. If I had a spreadsheet of data and sort of complex data from my business, right? And I've got a board meeting in 4 hours, and I want some charts, right? That would bring this data to life, and so that I can show it to the board, and the board will sort of go, "Oh, that's great, you know, thanks, well done." So if I've got a fantastic data analyst, let's say, over here, I can send them an email with the spreadsheet, and I can say, "Look, 4:00, I've got massive board meeting. I'm going to need to know this, and this in charts, please." And then I can just go and have a heavy lunch and a bottle of wine, and I can come back, and in my inbox, there's my presentation, and I can get up and in front of the board, I can click through this, and then one person on the board can sort of go, "Oh yeah, brilliant. So why is that 6.3 and not 6.4? And I go, "Mate, I have no idea at all. I don't know. There was some data. A guy did a thing. The number is a number. And then I had a drink and I have no idea what's going on," right? That's what happens when you chuck stuff into a model, right? Basically, you just give it to your data analyst. You're going to have a drink, and then you get some stuff back. And then if someone interrogates, it's kind of, I have no idea. Another way of doing it would be if I had that data and I didn't go to lunch, I had that data and I went to data analyst and I said, "Look, I've got to produce this, and this for a board meeting. What's the first thing I should do?" And they go, "Well, I mean, look, dude, some of those dates, they're in different format from each other. First thing you have to do is go and sort all those dates out, right? So the ones you have to get, there were some are US format, some are UK format. You just have to go and fix that." And so I go and do that. And then I come back and they go, "Right, I've done that. What's the next thing I should do?" You say, "Well, this indicator here, you're going to do a 1 if it's a customer, 2 if it's a supplier. Because you're going to want them in numbers. You're not going to want, great, okay, fine, I'll go and do that." And that person walks me through every single one of 500 steps that they would have taken while I was down the pub. They walk me through every single one of those steps, and I produce the outcome. Then I go and stand over the board and they say, "Why is it 6.4 and not 6.3? Then I can go, "Well, I know that. Reason was because we had to multiply that date by this number because there wasn't something in this column. I know that because I actually did it, but I was just told to do it." So there's a different way of working with artificial intelligence. From the point of giving it a task and saying, "Can you do that?" to the point where you go, "I'm going to do this. What do you think the next thing I should do is?" And then using that information to then do that work as far as possible without using any non-deterministic technology. So deterministic technology, normal code that we all knew up until about 5 years ago, right? Every time you do something, you get exactly the same answer. You write a little bit of code in Python or C# or Smalltalk if you're unfeasibly old. You write a little bit of code. Every time you run it to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, you get the same answer, right? It's deterministic. The outcome is already determined. Non-deterministic, AI stuff. Part of what you pass in every time you ask the same question twice, you won't get exactly the same output. There are mechanical, meaningful reasons for that. Part of what you do when you pass an AI set of tokens is the AI also chucks in a random number. So there's no way the two answers are going to be the same. It chucks in a random number. This is the simulation of thought. So of course it's not going to be the same, non-deterministic. So we use the AI to work out what's the next thing I should do, and then try and wherever possible carry that out without using non-deterministic technology. So then we've then got this audit trail. This was the next step. This is how it was carried out. This was the next step. So it carried out. So you can use that analogy. It's not quite that. It's a little bit weirder than that, but that's very, very close to it. The second human analogy is the football one. If you think of children playing football, say on a Saturday morning, and like the parents come and they stand around the outside, and the parents are just yelling all the time because they know all the answers. They've seen this before. They've played this sport 1,000 times. They all had a trial for Arsenal, and if it wasn't for the bad knee, they would have been blah, blah, right? And they're all just giving it that all the time. That's very similar to what actually happens in Amy in real term. The things around the outside, we call those sentinels. And each one of those sentinels has an area of responsibility or expertise. And that might be, say, security. And their job is just to look for something that looks like dangerous play or that might become dangerous play and just stop the match instantly. They have the ability to do that. Another sentinel might be responsible for remembering things, remembering the last time we played a football match. So having some idea of what's about to happen next and giving people, throwing information into the pitch. You might have another sentinel who then can see this swirling mass of information and activity and go, we are going to need to make a call to a database over there and get some information. So I'm going to scoop out some of that and use that to create a very, very specifically focused AI agent with just one task that's going to go and do that, come back. I'll then kill it and take that information and throw that into the middle. And that kind of process of constant negotiation between different entities with different objectives is how we get this kind of this force multiplier in terms of quality of thought and decision making. The net of all of that is that we're going to be bringing out our own large language model that Amy will run on. At the moment, everyone's very, very happy to run on. So their procurement departments have signed off anything that's hosted by Microsoft, right? Very soon, we're going to see, in fact, we are seeing it in the minute, it's just kind of slightly hidden. We're going to see a huge increase in the cost of tokens, the cost of buying tokens off Amazon or Google or Anthropic. That cost is going to rise. With our models, which we're currently in testing with at the minute, that our platform runs on, one, we'll give the model to you and not sell it on a per token basis. But two, it's 100 times smaller than the smallest comparable model in terms of use within Amy. So OpenAI's 4.1 is the 2 trillion parameter model. We're working at 24B. It runs on my laptop. Disclaimer, it's a good laptop, right? It's a good laptop. It's an M4, something like that. But it runs. I don't need a data center. It'll run here. So you can run it on fairly much, pretty standard kind of technology. It's 100 times smaller. So that's less carbon dioxide used and water created and less water used in the training and in every single piece of inference. Less water used and less carbon dioxide created. It's a greener solution, a smaller solution, a cheaper solution, a more transparent solution. And that all came from those 2 years of just wrestling with this technology, trying to get it to do, what we imagined it could do, but that was believed to be impossible at the time.
I have a million questions, but we can't talk forever. So, but one of the things I'm curious about with this is you're talking about a system that can operate and pull information from across an organization to answer questions, right? Like and do more. I'm again oversimplification, but does the level of complexity within the organization, the number of systems the organization is running, the number of sort of kludged together, ERPs and other things that exist change whether the model can run or it doesn't matter, and it's built in specifically to be able to overcome that?
Yeah, so it's kind of all separated. So that kind of plumbing piece is not like a real-time concern around the model. So we have a thing called the gateway, and it's the gateway's responsibility to connect to other systems. And it can connect to systems that are AI ready or that say they are AI ready, right? So there's the model context protocol, MCP, which is a kind of like a thing that would sit on top of your APIs that would allow a model to kind of ask for, please call this function with these parameters and bring it back to me straight into the model. That's lovely and great stuff. A lot of it in reality isn't as good as everyone kind of is saying it is. So everyone's saying that their platform is AI ready. In a lot of cases, it's kind of AI proof of concept ready. But once you want to get deeper into it, they haven't really supported all the things that they could yet. I'm sure in time they will. But also we can use AI technology to very quickly build API integrations and then expose them to Amy. The world hasn't magically got better interconnection because the AI exists. And in some areas, it's almost made it slightly worse. There are some sort of current trends with MCP, which are kind of problematic. So some people have got a very chatty LLM between us and them. So imagine, think of any SaaS provider in the world, and they've definitely got an MCP. Some have got a very chatty MCP, and it talks backwards and forwards quite a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, because I see that as being another potential attack vector. That would be another way that you could get into, right? So we create a ticketing system or something, and then we get hacked because we're just little ticketing something. And then now that AI is talking way, way too much to this AI from a bank. way more than anyone is happy with, exchanging way too many tokens. So we kind of worry about things like that. So there's some of that which isn't good. But in terms of getting ground coverage, MCP is a great technology. And then in terms of connecting into other things like maybe your own internal product, a lot of the people we talk about, that our customers have their own internal technology that they build and sell. So we're working a lot of custom stuff. AI is very, very good at shortening the distance, the amount of time to do that, so long as you use it responsibly and don't just vibe up some awfulness. If you use it responsibly, that world is a lot better, I think, than it was.
So, okay. So, all right. So there's so much, like, listen, so much interesting and so much technology. Let me shift to questions. So as you move from what I would consider to be groundbreaking technology in a lot of ways, certainly at an enterprise level, into go to market, and I just mean in generally where you are right now, where do you see the biggest challenges, concerns? What's the hardest part next of what you're doing? And
Yeah.
you know,
It's the okay. So I think it's a number of things. The first thing is scale play. So the hyperscalers are always difficult to go up against, and I've always whenever I advised anyone around this, it was more about trying to find a way to work in their ecosystem rather than to find a way to in any way directly compete. And I still think that's the most sensible thing, which is why typically at first implementation, we don't talk about, and we'll give you your own model sort of thing. At first implementation, we are talking about, we'll sit on top of that deal that you've done with AWS or whatever. Like, that's fine, because we can work. We don't need a huge amount of horsepower because of the nature of the platform. So, but as we kind of pull away from that, I mean, we know a customer that spent 2 years with AWS to try and build a service for them that we built in the workshop we had with them. So in the room, we built the service that they had spent 2 years trying to build with AWS. There's definitely a competitive piece there, right? There's definitely a point where it's kind of like, you should stop doing that and you should start doing this.
mm-hmm.
And that's a challenge. It's like that's a challenge, because that's not a fight I think we're ever going to win. I think the way forward, if we can't be part of the ecosystem in that way because we are potentially competitive, then what we can be is we can think about the way that the tide is going to move and be a beneficiary. So by that, I mean, so instead of sort of going, oh yeah, you just plug us into your Microsoft deal, you just plug us into your AWS deal, your Anthropic deal, or whatever you've decided to do, we just plug into that. I think we start by being a sort of a smaller player within that ecosystem because we're fun to work with. And if it's a difficult problem, like, I'm the CEO and I will be there. Right. So we're kind of like fun to work with from that point of view. We're a B Corp, that sort of stuff. 10% of everything we do goes to charity for women and girls. 10% of everything we do with AI goes towards a good technology foundation, which is a new thing a new foundation that we're setting up to get this technology into the hands of people who could use it to change their communities, not just people who could use it to make money. All that kind of, and I don't want to say shtick, but all that kind of shtick makes us people that people want to work with. The way the tide changes is what happens when the AI bubble bursts. So the technology won't suddenly get worse, but I think the technology will suddenly get a lot more expensive. And the phase that we're in now, if you look at the kind of deals that are available, if you're a reasonable consumer of this, if you're a business that consumes a lot of this technology, then it's about land grab. And at some point it will be about extraction, and the costs, your per token costs, will go up significantly. And at that point, I think we've really got a story that actually you should maybe migrate some of what you're doing into our model, where you don't have any token costs. You just have fairly modest internal hosting costs.
So many considerations in a market that is evolving and changing so rapidly. And like, to your point, this is the idea that you had, 6 months ago that took 4 years, or what,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
as you said, like, it was obviously a lot longer and it just took longer, or whatever the time frame is, but because it's hard to do it proper. A lot of people can talk, but very few people can deliver it properly. So, okay, like I said, this is, we could go on and on, but I don't want to, any advice you would give to others who are trying to build something, latest technology, how to think about tackling the problem, call it, I say mistakes you've made that maybe they can avoid as you go forward. That would be great. Or as they go forward.
Gosh, that's really good. So that's, I don't know, that's like quite tough because I'm still in the process of making the mistakes. I'm not quite at the process
Uh-huh.
of being able to reflect on them and provide wisdom to others. Sometimes you should let the weather do the work. So we, at the beginning of R&D, and this is why we spent 2 years doing three months worth of work, is we suddenly like figured out, what would be really cool if these systems could call other systems. So if an AI-based system could call another system, could call a function on another system, right? So you go to Salesforce and you call one of their API functions, get my customers or whatever it is, right? And you kind of go, oh, wouldn't that be excellent? And like, if we'd stopped and gone, like, we don't have to worry about that. I guarantee you someone is working on that now, right? I guarantee somebody's just, and there's going to be a thing and it's just going to happen. And we were kind of like, but we didn't do that. We were like, that is absolutely brilliant. How are we going to do that? So we basically had to do it for ourselves, invent what is basically tool calling and kind of cobble it onto really early generation models by forcing them to generate JSON and then making them do it 3 times because they would never get it right. And then putting that through a parser and then using that to call sometimes before tool calling just turned up. And it was kind of like, yeah, that. How do we get that? Or you just download a model that's got it and then you're done. It's like, okay, brilliant. And there were 3 examples of that. Like we invented RAG before anybody else did, which is like the ability to, and it's just like, yeah, we invented it, except then someone else came along and they had way more money, way more time. And I think it's like there are things about this is if you're trying to do newness, it's focusing on the newness and trusting that the weather will do the stuff. So the thing that we were trying to find a way of bringing transparency into the way that these models work was different thinking was a different problem to the problem that other people were talking about. Everyone was trying to get the magical black box just to do all the things. And we shouldn't have spent so much time getting our magical box to do all the things with. It's quite cool now because it's entirely our technology, right? It's entirely bespoke technology. So in terms of like freedom from, other people's licensing or the ability for the US government to get hold of our data or any of those kind of things, we're completely buttoned down because we wrote the whole thing. We rolled it from the ground up. But in terms of like velocity, if we'd just been a lot less overexcitable and a lot more focused.
Focus, right? Focus is
A
always
lot more of
there you
what
go.
is actually the problem rather than wake up in the morning and go, oh, mate, I've got a brilliant idea, right? Everyone stop. I've got a brilliant idea. We're gonna make it be able to read. It's like, okay, fine, you do that. I guarantee you someone else is doing. So use the weather. Sometimes let the weather
I love it.
do the
That's a
work.
great way to do it. David, how can people find you, find Amy,
Yeah.
reach you? Like,
I'm obviously on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is just a place where billions of people send. So you get lost in the noise, basically. I have no idea what that platform is for. My marketing agency make me write posts. I have no idea I don't know who spends their time there, but you can find me there. The Amy.online is just about Amy. There'll be a new version of that, which it's got the kind of slightly nerdy stuff on it at the minute. That will have pricing and all that stuff on it in the new version that's coming out, I think, in 2 weeks. And voodoopark.com is that's the old site for the company that's been going for all them years. That's there. And you can look at pictures of our rugby team.
amazing. Listen, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And to everybody who's watching and listening, until next time, thanks.